Welcome to the Rugby Chat podcast. I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, a website, podcast, Twitter account and YouTube channel bringing you the best in rugby predictions and opinion. Don't forget to subscribe on your favourite podcasting app so we drop into your phone every week. And also please leave us a 5-star review. Other stars are available, but why would you want to do that? If you'd like to watch what happens behind the covers, the show is live on YouTube at 8 PM New Zealand time every Tuesday. And I need 1,000 subscribers to make it, to keep my YouTube partner status. So please do subscribe to me on YouTube, the DrivingMaul channel. Also, you can join in the discussion on our 5 questions via Twitter. Just follow at DrivingMaul, look out for the questions and use #RugbyChat. So tonight we have a brand new guest calling in all the way from South Africa. We've got Brendan from Rugby, the stats app that does comparison stats so you can see how your team, if you're a coach, how your team does against other teams of your kind of age group and area. How you doing, Brendan?
I can't complain. Thank you so much for the invite, Paul. It's going to be fantastic. I did a bit of research so that I can give proper answers, hopefully get you to that 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I can only do so if you have guests who actually know what they're talking about. So I'm going to try my best. And yeah, thanks. And how's it to Mike as well, eh?
And yes, and then also we have a regular, obviously, Mike Pullman joining us from Hamilton. And we're having a guest on that's done some research. This is going to this could show us up here, Mike.
Yeah. I'm incredibly out of my depth when it comes to South African rugby, but it's good to be back and looking forward to a good season of talking all sorts of rugby with you, mate.
Thank you very much. Yes, and this week we will be talking about the Africa Conference with one question focusing on each team. Super Rugby is just around the corner, so we're going to cover South Africa this week, or South Africa and obviously South America in the Jaguares. Next week we'll cover Australia, the Australian Conference, and obviously Japan. And then the following week we will cover the New Zealand Conference. So let's get right into it then. With 20 new players and Mitchell arriving as the coach, can this be anything more than a transition season for the Bulls?
All right, is that mine, Paul?
Yep, all through straight to you, Brendan. Let's kick it off with the education one.
Well, I think you guys know John Mitchell quite well. He would have come to South Africa very prepared. I think even during his stint in America, he's always been watching the scene locally. I think he would like to get results straight away. And as you guys would have heard from his comments yesterday about this Rudy Page not being selected, obviously it's quite a shock. He's been traveling with the Springboks. He's been doing quite well internationally. And being shafted from the squad in favor of the young Ambrose Papier. Now, to the guys not familiar with Afrikaans, Papier is actually Afrikaans for Page. So he swapped an Afrikaans paper for an English one, and maybe it's a gesture to a very strong Afrikaans contingent in Pretoria. But now, in all seriousness, I wouldn't expect a semi-final, but definitely want to get to a top 10.
So can we say he's turning the page? Oh dear, sorry, no. That's...
Yeah, you had to push that one, eh?
Had to push it all the way there. Mike, you'll obviously know John Mitchell from his time with the All Blacks, and he was at the Lions. He tends to upset people after a couple of years. So, can we say he's got a short shelf life? We think.
Yeah, definitely. I actually don't rate Mr. Mitchell as a coach. To be fair, yeah, he did some great things with the All Blacks. But I mean, look at the players that were in the All Blacks at that point in time. I don't think he will last terribly long. But I think the Bulls, gone are the days when they used to be one of those teams that you look at and as a Kiwi you go, oh, I don't think we'll win that one. But I guess their one saving grace is, like you've said in the notes, a lot of their players have come from the Curry Cup. They know their combinations. They know each other well. That could be, from a team morale and from a confidence standpoint, that could be great. But John Mitchell doesn't know these guys.
John Mitchell has history in South Africa. I mean, he was with the Lions until I think that bust up. And yeah, you're right. When I said there were 20 new players, most of those have come through the Blue Bulls at the Currie Cup level. So it's not like some of the Australian sides that don't have a feeder team when they bring in 15, 20 players that just don't know each other. At least they do know each other. I did touch on touch with Andre, who's a South African friend of mine, to be fair, he's a Sharks supporter, but he reckons they're going to struggle away from Loftus. But actually at home, the altitude and stuff should be to their advantage. And they're pretty decent at home, but away from home, they're just not going to travel well again. And that's been their Achilles heel, hasn't it, Brendan, over the years, is their travel.
For sure. I actually think Mitchell might be able to change a bit of that, especially when they travel to Australasia. I think he's going to make them appreciate the travel aspect. I remember Laurie Maines used to do that with the Cats. No South African teams knew how to travel, took themselves too seriously abroad, didn't really explore the cities, didn't get among the people. And I think Mitchell will be key to changing that. I also think, he's made a bold statement now by saying he's going to gun for all the young players. I think with the media, he's buying himself a bit of time there and saying, look, this is going to be a development year. But again, I reckon a top 10 finish for the Bulls because they have a strong squad. They have a culture, which is something I think Mitchell is good at forming. And whether he lasts beyond 2 years, I don't know. But I think in this year, that clean broom is going to sweep. And I have high expectations for them.
Yeah, he doesn't take any prisoners. So yeah, I can definitely see the clean broom, and it'll be his way or the highway. That's for certain. Which may be what we're seeing has happened with Rudy Page. Maybe he just upset Mitchell early doors. Moving on to the success team of South Africa for the last couple of years, and with Ackerman going to Gloucester, have the Lions peaked, and will they drop back into the pack this season? Go on, Mike. Do you want to kick us off on that one?
Yeah. I think I just had this really bad feeling about the Lions this year. I mean, and I say that because they've come so close 2 years in a row. And after all that, the momentum factor, that's the only reason I say that, and in terms of Ackerman, yeah, it's a big loss, but heaps of teams lose, big players. But I just have this feeling that the Lions, the best chance to win the title was last year, came close, but couldn't quite get it done.
Obviously Ackerman's coach. Ackerman's been replaced by one of the assistant coaches, so a lot of there's continuity amongst the coaching, and apparently he's a very good coach from what I hear. I don't know much about him, but I hear he's not that charismatic, and that he may struggle around the sort of team morale side of things. Is that how things are seen in South Africa?
Oh, look, Sways de Bruin is a visionary. A lot of the successful teams in South Africa he's been roundabout there in the structures always. So he's kind of seen as one of the real visionaries in coaching, and he always comes up with something new. His son, Neil de Bruin, is heavily involved now as in the backroom staff. I think just a key issue that you didn't mention in your notes were of JP Ferreira, who left the Lions for Munster, who was the defense coach. And in the balance of things, I think losing two big parts of your intellectual capital in Ackerman and JP Ferreira might come to haunt them a bit. I can just see the Lions when they're on tour and they lose a game they should have won, and there's maybe a key injury. I think that charisma of Ackerman or the control he had is going to come into play, and I think the Lions are going to find it incredibly hard this year to maintain the levels of last year just because of that.
Yeah, it's when adversity hits, isn't it? If they get a good start, they could be okay, but if they stumble early, then picking that up could be kind of difficult. And when you talk about their new head coach, to me it sounds a lot like Wayne Smith, who is someone who has been a sort of a key person around lots of successful teams in New Zealand, except when he was head coach. And actually, he was really good as being the tactician, the guy behind the scenes, actually doing the coaching, rather than necessarily having to do the man management and the organisation that a head coach has to do. So I guess this is going to be a real test to see whether he can step up and handle that side of it as well.
This is Sway's chance, and we'll know after a few months in the Super Rugby whether whether he's going to be stepping up as a head coach or not, for sure.
Cool. Then the side that everyone had a lot of promise and thought was going to do really well 2 years ago, and obviously haven't really reached the heights of their international team at the Rugby World Cups, is the Jaguares. Now, with a settled squad and a new coach in Mario Ledesma, is this the season the Jaguares can actually kick on and show us how good rewind, how good Argentinian rugby really is?
I hope so. You know, I remember last year we talked a lot about how the certain rules around player eligibility were really hurting the Jaguares. Never pronounced that right. Paul, I am so out of my depth on this show. I haven't talked about rugby for so long, man. It's crazy. But if there's anything, I love the way they play the game. It's outlandish. It's you know, and they throw all caution to the wind. So they'll be able to test sides any day of the week. But no, I don't think they'll actually have a great season. It'll be exciting, but it'll fall short.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, Mario Ledesma also was the forwards coach at the Wallabies. He's the guy who managed to give the Wallabies the kind of pack they needed going into the Rugby World Cup in 2015. And so he's a forwards guy. So I can see them shoring up the forwards, because the forwards really weren't. It wasn't an Argentinian pack that we can think of that we saw from the Jaguares last year. So hopefully he'll shore that up. They do look a little bit thin on the ground on props in their squad, so hopefully they've got a couple of guys they can bring in. And it's going to be interesting to see whether, with a more pragmatic forwards coach, whether they do keep that wild, exciting back play that's going on. Now, Brendan, you mentioned before you've done some reading up on Mario Ledesma. So, how are you reading this?
Yeah, look, I think you just said that there will be a strong forwards focus. Argentinian teams have always relied on that kind of base, and they played a bit of 10-man rugby, always had good fly-offs, kicking them into spaces. And then since Henry's consultation, I think that was now 2-3 years ago, you know, they started playing a very different brand of rugby, a lot of offloads, an incredible amount of tempo. A lot like the Lions in some way, and, you know, just keeping on the front foot the whole time. It's all about pace. It's all about shifting the ball. And what I fear at the moment, and you can see it with the Argentinian side, there's a little bit at the moment. They're kind of in that in-between phase where it's going to be interesting to see which one Ledesma goes for. Does he go back to that platform of having a strong pack, playing with the 10, getting you into spaces? Or will he keep embracing this more that consultation that Henry gave them and get them to play that momentum game? Very important that the Jaguares does well this year, so that they can finally decide, are they going to base their Argentinian players in the south, or are they going to keep pushing more guys up into Europe? So it's a key season for the Jaguares. As a Cheetahs fan who don't have a team in Super Rugby this year, I'm going to be fully behind them all the way.
Yeah, we've got a question here from Joshua. What do we think about the Jaguares draw? Are they the team most disrupted by travel? I think, yeah. I
think, yes. I mean, they clearly are the team most disrupted by travel. Japan now being in the Australian conference, their travel is, at least, whilst it's a long distance, it's in a similar time zone. The thing that really kills you with travel is going across time zones, and let's be honest, no one plays in Jaguares time zone. And some of the trips we'd heard about, I think, if I remember rightly, it took the Chiefs 25 hours to get from one game from where they were in South Africa to Argentina. So you've lost a whole day's recovery training by being scrunched up on an aeroplane. You then have to get over jet lag. So yeah, clearly they are the most disrupted by travel. But you'd hope that they've had 2 years now of learning how to do it. So hopefully they would be getting better at it. And I think a few of us were really encouraged at the beginning of last season when they did beat, I think it was the Cheetahs in South Africa early doors in the season. We thought, oh, here we go. They've got their travel sorted. but then it just took its toll, and they kind of ran out of steam. I think one of the big differences between the Jaguares and how the Lions play is the Lions choose when to do it, whereas the Jaguares seem to just do it all the time. They don't know. They don't seem. There doesn't seem to be any kind of any moderation about it. It's let's just go, go, go. Whereas the Lions, with Yankees, he does pick his moments. He doesn't try doing it all of the time. He will kick the ball for territory when it's the right time. I think that perhaps that level of decision making and rugby intelligence needs to improve for them, from Sanchez in particular. And obviously they've got the Brumbies, or the scrum half that was at the Brumbies last season, who does love to kick the ball, perhaps a bit too much. But yeah, we might be able to, maybe that'll bring a bit more balance to their game rather than it just being so one-dimensional. Moving on then to the Sharks. I know Andre, who's a mate of mine, really does rate the Sharks this season. He says they've been building up strong. They went back to a youth policy a few years ago, and they got rid of all their old guys, and that it's going to come through. But with Lambie gone now, can Dupreez be the new number 10 to turn the Sharks into serious contenders again? So, Brendan, I saw Dupreez was, who's he? I'm getting told he is supposed to be, he's regarded as the best 10 in the country.
Look, yeah, I think the reason for saying that is finally we have again a solid team, you know. And when I say solid, I mean back to the Henry Honeyball days, you know, not incredibly flashy, but very, very good on defense, a very good kicking team, a very good tactical team. Basically, if I could call it that, a South African team. And you know, we've had flamboyancy, we've had a couple of really talented, pacey guys. We've had guys who could kick the ball a mile, but maybe on defense weren't that good. So I think in the Dupreez we finally have this, and his father being the coach, there's also that kind of a no-nonsense. You get your set pieces right, and that excites me. I know a lot of people wouldn't like, you know, a boring South African side, and I think they were shown up in the Currie Cup final for that. The minute the Stormers brought a bit of flair to the game, it was hard for the Sharks to defend against it, but they're only going to get better this year. And I'm a bit of a believer in the Dupreez hype. In fact, he's not really that hyped in the country because he doesn't have that natural game-breaking ability. But I think the Sharks have a really, really solid platform to do. And I'm all for it. We're going to be watching them with open eyes and a lot of expectations.
So you wouldn't have considered Henri Pallard to be a kind of South African style 10?
Could have been, but you know, we decided he had a very good junior year, played him against the All Blacks, he scored a try, he was the new hero. We put on a Superman suit for him, decided he doesn't need development, decided he doesn't need rest, broke him down over 2 years, and now we're slowly having to build him up from scratch. So yeah, I hope that model of development will never be followed in this country again, and that a guy that's a bit more under the radar like a Dupreez will be given the chance to develop into a proper team. Yeah,
you know, I never really rated Pat Lambie. I mean, there's a lot of good buzz about him, especially over there in South Africa, but a few times I saw him, I didn't really think he was all that great. But again, you don't have to be big in size to be a good number 10. You know, a lot of Aaron Cruden, for example, in New Zealand, not big at all. Damian McKenzie going to have his big year at 10, not big at all. So you don't have to be big and muscly to be a great 10. But the Sharks, yeah, there's something out of all the teams. I think maybe the Sharks would be, you know, the one that would be a wee bit of a surprise. The Stormers, yeah, we'll talk about them later. But Sharks, like you said, very typical South African team, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I thought they were going to put Bosch in there, but apparently it sounds like Bosch is going to move to 15 because he's considered not big enough defensively in that number 10 channel, where you say Dupreez has got that. So it's going to be interesting how they go. Some of my sort of Durban insider knowledge that I've been given is that anyone who plays early in the season is that it's too hot for playing rugby there, really, and too humid, and so chances of getting your try bonus points, particularly early in the season, are pretty low, as it's just it's just too hot and too humid. to be playing too much running rugby. Brendan, do you think is that a fair comment that about the weather down there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the statistics prove it. Like you said, it's no impediment to playing a good free open style of rugby, but it does seem to limit the amount of 4 tries scored. Get to 3, ball starts slipping out. Second half, the last 20 minutes when the game's supposed to be opening up, it doesn't. It becomes a bit of a battle on the ground. So yes, I think statistically that would be the case, but I don't expect the Sharks to be a bonus point team at all. I expect it to be one of those really pragmatic teams who grind out wins, and they're going to be learning to do that in Durban as they would try to do it in Auckland and in Sydney and everywhere else. So that's the kind of team I can kind of see Robert de Preer building. Not too much flash, very pragmatic, but going after the results.
Cool. And then, Mike, you're going to kick us off on the Stormers, and so let's go there then. Will the lack of international quality 9 and 10 hamper the Stormers' push for big things? Because this is where de Preer's was last season, and the Sharks went and stole him.
Mine.
Go on, Brendan. Sorry.
Oh, is it mine? Yeah. Look, I think you hit the nail on the head as far as the Stormers and their 19 problems are concerned. I'll take you back a few years. 2010, the Bulls beat the Stormers in the final. The Stormers were hampered by not having a good 9 and 10. It's almost like in that region they've never taken it seriously. They let it go roughly at the same time. Surely they could have put up a bit bigger fight. They weren't a poor union in financial disarray in those days. So it's almost for me as if they never prioritized their 9 and 10. De Preer last year was a year too young. He also played with a bunch of youngsters. This year, when he could have made a difference, now he's at the Sharks. So yes, I believe 100%, like in many years gone past, that the lack of an international quality 9 and 10 is going to be the undoing of the Stormers.
I just can't. You just say, why would you not get yourself? You've got someone who's that good. Why can't you keep hold of him? I remember I looked at their squad, and I looked at their 9 and 10 options, and I don't think there were any there that I really could recognise. And as we've seen at the Blues for many years, if you haven't got a decent quality 10, you're not going to win anything. And you may not even make the playoffs. So we'll see how that all pans out. Mike, thoughts on the Stormers?
Oh no, not really. I mean, not my favourite of the South African franchises. Great team, but I mean, I think that wouldn't matter who we're talking about if you don't have that experience at 9 and 10. It just has dramatic effects, like at the breakdown and flows on through the backline as well. So, could be a tough season for them.
And I hear Etzebeth has got himself injured as well. So with their captain and obviously talismanic leader there going down injured, it could be a long old season for them. Clearly, obviously, they also lost Hugh Jones to Scotland as well. So they lost a couple of guys in their backs, even though they managed to keep quite a solid, managed to keep most of their pack together.
Look, make no mistake, Paul. This Damien Williams kid is something exciting. The problem is South Africa seems to have one of those a year, and depends on the level of crap we're in, how quickly we push these kids. We have Bosch at the Sharks, roughly the same story. A kid has a good under-20 season, and suddenly he's expected to go and beat the All Blacks on your behalf. So Damien Williams is someone to watch. And look, the Stormers with Khaleesi and these guys, they have a strong pack. Even with it a bit out, I don't think they're going to be shoved around. There's some exciting players coming through. The problem just is Super Rugby, as we have seen, and here we mentioned Mertens, and we mentioned Carter, and we mentioned even in the season the Reds won. You had Quade Cooper in top form together with Guinea. The 19 combo just seems to be what Super Rugby is about, and you're not going to win it if you don't have it. So no matter how talented the Williams kid is, how good their pack is, I just don't think he's ready, and for that reason, I can't back the Stormers in the top 8 or anywhere near it.
Well, we've got a couple of bonus questions because there is next week the Varsity Cup kicks off down in South Africa. And this is, I'll be honest, we're now heading into territory I really have very little knowledge about. Apparently the UP Tucks, whoever they are, got their 3rd title last year, beating Matties in the final. Can they go back to back and go past Matties' 3 titles? Now, because those are the 2 big varsity teams, I understand.
That's right. Look, I think the competition at Varsity Cup level is quite strong now. You have Puck with a very big academy, doing better and better and better under Jonathan McQuena, a very good coach that I think we should be watching out for. I think he's going to go through the ranks. He's being treated well, so he's not being pushed too far. So I expect something from Puck this year, but also Shimlas will always be there. As far as I've heard, they got hold of quite a good number of very talented forwards, especially this year. I think the problem just here is with Tucks. You have Mitchell, who's now backing young players, and as you guys know now, the Varsity Cup is basically the feeder level to Super Rugby. It's no longer the Curry Cup, really. So if you shape in the Varsity Cup, your chances of being pulled into your super squads are quite good. And with Mitchell openly backing the young guns this year, I think Tucks will definitely be depleted around about the time when it starts to matter and the Bulls pick up a few injuries. So I think that's going to have an effect. So I can't call a winner there for the first time in many years, and that's probably a good thing.
It is, and the Varsity Cup is one of these places where World Rugby trials different laws. So I think last year they had something about scoring different points depending on from whereabouts on the pitch you start the move, which sounded crazy to me last year. And this year the thing they're going to try out is having a power play rule. So for those of you that haven't heard about this, basically what happens is the captain on the pitch, if the ball is in his own half, he is allowed to call 1 5-minute power play where he gets to choose 2 players from the opposition's back line to go off the pitch for 5 minutes, a bit like a sin binning. It's for 5 minutes, not for 10 minutes. And so one side, so it'll be 15 against 13 for a period of 5 minutes. Brendan, how do South African fans sort of feel about getting these kind of crazy rules thrown into one of their sort of top feeder tournaments? And has there been any talk about this power play rule?
Look, yeah, when it first was muted and on Twitter and in the media, a lot of journalists especially came out strongly against it, which I felt was quite an important stance at the time. Strangely enough, yesterday in relation to Cape Town not having water, someone suggested that we finally go to the Rain Queen, because I don't know if you guys know that we have a Rain Queen in South Africa officially on a payroll to solve this problem, but she lives in Limpopo somewhere, and I don't know why, if we have one, we don't consult to try and fix. But in Varsity Cup is a bit like calling the Rain Queen. We have a problem of creating space of player esteem, space in our rugby. This will remove 2 of the opposition players. I just can't, at international level, saying to us, South Africa, you're struggling, but why don't we guys off so that you guys can also score a couple of tries? So it's a total gimmick. It's totally ridiculous. But I think what's different to this gimmick as opposed to the other ones is that it's actually detrimental to our game. It's going to create more problems than what it solves.
It sounds bloody ridiculous. That's all I'll say.
I knew exactly what response I was going to get from you, Mike. But yeah, no, I'm assuming that they can only call this during a stoppage and play, because if they could call it any time when the ball is in their half, it could get absolutely crazy. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. It seems a very strange one to me. Obviously, even the term power play is very Americanization, and I think they're going the wrong way with this one. We have plenty of time on our hands, which means fantastic. We get to cover off on a few other things. So the Rugby World Cup qualifying is continuing. So Canada versus Uruguay, good double header, kicks off this weekend. Have you always been keeping an eye on the World Cup qualifying, and do you have a favourite or a prediction for this game?
Yeah.
Oh dear. So Canada are 21 in the world, Uruguay 18th. So I think we're going to, but Canada get the home game first. So I think Uruguay might be in up for this one. I did get a tweet just before the show saying, "Hey, you've got to touch on the Rugby World Cup qualifying." So there you go, folks. That's our in-depth analysis of the World Cup qualifying. Uruguay, because they're 3 points higher in the world rankings. I'm going to back them over the next 2 weekends. Other things coming up. Also,
Sorry, Paul, if I could just fill in there. I've been studying Canadian rugby over the past few weeks a little bit. The key interest being why the women's rugby is so strong. If you go for example, to Alberta's rugby website, you will find way more women's rugby clubs than men's rugby clubs. So, from a development point of view, I'm very keen on seeing Canada doing extra. They never get the high-profile coach like a Mitchell or Gary Gold or whatever that the States are getting, but they kind of need to. And then on the other hand, you have Uruguay, who, we need South America to start standing up as a rugby power. They have their big brother Argentina, who we're all pushing to do a little bit better. So, in that game, even though Canada is ranked, I'm going to go for Canada on this one, just because I really desperately want to see them do well and see the men's game take the same line as the sevens has, and into serious development.
Yeah, no, and it needs to. I guess one of the things we shouldn't be too flippant about, but also as we're heading towards Six Nations time, it also means we're heading towards the America's Champions Cup time, which means that we have an Argentina 15, obviously it's their second string team, the USA, Canada, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil, I think it is. 6 teams do it, having what some of us termed the America's Six Nations. So that is kicking off soon as well. So those kind of steps towards development of those countries is obviously fantastic. And as you're talking about women's Canadian rugby, obviously the women's sevens team out of Canada are very strong, and they will be in action in Sydney this weekend in a precursor to, the sevens visiting Hamilton the following weekend. Mike, have you got your tickets all lined up?
Yeah, I've actually got tickets, so I might be doing media. I've applied, but haven't heard from New Zealand Rugby yet, so don't like my chances there. But yeah, I don't know a lot about the Black Ferns at this point in time. The Black Ferns, I don't know.
No, that's Silver.
I got practice for this for you. You got to get me on the New Zealand shows, man.
I'll get you on the New Zealand shows as well. Don't worry. But yes, so so Sydney Sevens is this weekend, which was an absolute cracker last year. They are one of the few stops that is both men's and ladies, and they put men's and ladies on the main pitch. There's no taking them away, and they put them on a B pitch, which is great. So that should be a big weekend of rugby over in Sydney. So, boys, we have plenty of time. Any topics you want to, anything you've seen over the past couple of weeks that you'd like to chew the cud on?
Yeah, I've got one. I want to talk about these rugby camps that the All Blacks are going to be holding during Super Rugby. Heard about that?
You've been listening to Sumo and Mils Muliana talking to each other, haven't you?
Yeah. What do you think about it?
Okay. So for those that haven't heard, there are 4 camps going to be held during Super Rugby for the All Blacks to attend to, and everyone who is part of the All Blacks sort of wider training squad have to attend 2 of those that are the most convenient for them. I believe is kind of how it's all panning out. Is that right, Mike?
Yep.
So that's basically it. So they're going to have these mid-season camps. I'm a bit surprised that there's such a hoo-ha about it, because I thought these have been going on for a while now. And we've got to remember that New Zealand rugby, or rugby in New Zealand rather than New Zealand rugby itself, is all catered for one thing only, and that's the All Blacks to do well, because the All Blacks brand pays for all of rugby, and so everything is titled towards that. Last year, relatively speaking, was a tough year because they drew and lost a game, which is more than they've done since 2014, I think. So it's the worst year that the All Blacks had I think since 2014, and so I think this is a step to say, hey, look, we are going through a rebuilding phase. We need more training time together, and it's an acknowledgement that actually that they have lost a lot of players and they are rebuilding and need to need to get that more time together, I think.
Yeah, I guess what does that do for Super Rugby? You know, like as a coach of Super Rugby, you're preparing for a game, maybe a New Zealand derby, and you lose, 4 or 5 players that you build your game plan around. I knew this was going to happen. I just thought it would be next year, and that kind of makes me wonder how. Like you've given some good reasons, but maybe is the England match something to do with what's going on here?
And I wouldn't think it's actually just one game. I mean, clearly that is going to be the game that is that we're all going to be talking about for the next 8 months, whatever it is. And I think we should actually try and enjoy some of the rugby between then, rather than just waiting for that one game. But no, yes, that game is looming on the horizon. The world number 1, number 2 playing each other for the first time since 2014, 2013. So I mean clearly that's going to be that is a big game that's coming up. But I wouldn't have thought that this was all around that. I think it's an acknowledgement that as a wider squad they need more time together. And I think we've got to remember what is Super Rugby for. Super Rugby is to produce All Blacks. At the end of the day, that's all it's there for. New Zealand Rugby doesn't really care about attendance or people turning up and watching it, as we've seen with the dropping attendance and dropping TV figures. Unfortunately, I don't think that's not what I think New Zealand Rugby is all about. The All Blacks and everything else basically has to be subservient to that.
If I can just make an observation, Paula, I've always thought the New Zealanders innovate around a 2-year cycle, and I mean, if you guys can remember exactly 2 years ago now, Super Rugby started, and all of a sudden we saw these pods in the middle, just like the year before, but all of a sudden you had your italics take a step inside and giving a pop pass to another forward player to get a bit more momentum on the ball. Very small bit of innovation that totally changed, I think, the momentum that forward suddenly started to generate in that 10-12 channel. Now, what I can see happen here, I think over the course of the last year, the guys in the backroom staff of the All Blacks would have picked up a certain amount of things. They are now ready to give directives of change, and that's why these camps would be important. You get the players in that you're going to be using at the end of the year. You might not have enough time to drill in these new concepts, and you want to introduce them to the players as quickly as possible. That makes sense to me from that point of view, to get them in sooner rather than later, even if it's a little bit disruptive to the Super Rugby side. But, as you know, your international coaches don't have that much time with players. And if there's big news to be shared, then get them in camp and get it shared.
I think one of the other things, and this is as a Kiwi speaking, as a fan also, I don't like the idea of the potential that these big New Zealand derbies, and yes, we have a lot of them in the season, but potentially a lot of the star players are missing from that. So, and not to discredit South Africa, Australia, and Argentina in that, but I would prefer, if these players are going to go, then it happens when we're playing other country nations in Super Rugby.
I think they're going to be available for the actual game, aren't they? They're just not going to be available for the week prior to the game to train and prepare. Yeah. So I think we'll still see the players playing. That's an interesting one, that 2 years out from a Rugby World Cup, you're suggesting there's an innovation about to arrive that we're going to see. Basically, here's the roadmap to how New Zealand are going to win or try to win the Rugby World Cup in Japan, is perhaps being hatched in these 4 training sessions. That's a really interesting concept to me, but being a rugby nerd.
It's actually quite interesting too, though. If you look at, I don't know if you guys are cricket fans, but Kane Williamson, the captain of the Black Caps, has a very close relationship with Steve Hansen. This season, for the first time ever, Kane Williamson has actively asked for certain weeks at a time away from the team. And, you know, you're going to have a lot of top-class All Blacks, you know, having a week, 2 weeks at a time away from their, you know, quote-unquote normal day job. It's just interesting, you know?
That's an interesting knowledge share between the Black Caps and the All Blacks and between different sports, which is one of those things that's been talked about by English coaches for a long time now. Obviously, I mean, Eddie Jones went and watched Real Madrid training, for example. Stuart Lancaster got other coaches from other clubs, from other sports in, and he also went and watched baseball, I think it was, over in the States and how they trained. So it's something that's been going on, but perhaps not quite as closely as signs that might be going on here between the Black Caps and the All Blacks.
Yeah, I mean, Gennard, if I can jump in here from what I've seen in Ireland, you know, and it's made me think a lot about how skills, especially, is taught in South Africa as well. You know, most of these boys will play rugby in one season, and then cricket in the other. And, you know, cricket is not a sport for all body size and shapes. So a lot of your chunkier guys, and as I call them, the dumb ones, there in the front would not be playing cricket, not be, you know, keeping themselves upskilled throughout an entire season. Now, contrast that to Ireland, where they play Gaelic football, which they also encourage all sizes to play. And, you know, from what I've witnessed is especially an ability in the air, because, you know, Gaelic football is like Aussie rules. So a lot of your balls come flying laterally all over the field. It's a east to west game, not just north to south like rugby tends to be sometimes. And, you know, that gives these guys a clear advantage. And I'm very glad. I know Jake White did a lot of that. He went, funnily enough, to a Gaelic club. He went over to America to study. I think Clive Woodward was also a key disciple of this kind of thinking. And he's constantly looking at other sports. They find that little bit of an edge. So for me, that's widely exciting. And, you know, just another thing where I think South Africa is lacking a little bit.
And I think also one of the things they've shown is that multidisciplined youth players especially are less prone to injury or less prone to repetitive injury or sort of repetitive strain kind of style injuries than those who just play one sport. So I think it's good to have another sport that you go off and train and to not specialise too heavily, too early as someone in youth rugby or youth sport as well. It brings a more rounded character, more rounded player into it as well. Any other ones want to chew the fat over? If not, thank you very much, guys, for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Brendan, why don't you just give everyone a quick overview as to what Ruggo is and your coach aiding app?
Oh yeah, cheers, Paul, and thanks for the plug. I think the main deal, the main reason why I built Ruggo was to give teams from under 14 level to 18 a chance to work with a bit of analysis without having to spend a lot of money on video equipment. So the main thinking behind it was to find a way that you can measure performance without needing to first film the game, so that can cut down costs and it can make everything a lot quicker. And, you know, as things developed, we built into it the idea of comparing your team to another and essentially benchmarking it. So, you know, you can tell your players now, we might have lost the match, but our tackle average climbed a little bit. Our scrum set piece is starting to look better. And just give young players a bit of a new focus and set them goals other than just winning and losing. So, yeah, we're finally releasing tomorrow. I know the New Zealand school season starts a little bit later, only around April, May. So I'll be getting involved there a little bit more. But yeah, it's exciting in South Africa. We quite a lot of teams signed on. and they're all going to be scoring their own matches, and these then go into averages. So we tackle average, for example, or a variance of play, how often they play wide, how often they kick, and this is going to be a brand new coaching tool for coaches to add a bit of an edge to their performance of the teams.
Now, I don't know if it was proprietary, but are we allowed to talk about what you told me about the Irish underage kids and the South African ones? What you've seen in the stats?
Yeah, look, I've had to test this application for a long time. I spent a whole year in South Africa testing as many teams as I could. At under 14 level, I think I tested 132 games. I then went over to Ireland and did close to 70. Yeah, the interesting statistics that the Irish under 14 level kids pass the ball almost double as many times in a game. Their wide balls to the wing would be about 20 to 23 per game, whereas in South Africa it's 6 to 8. So a clear difference in how the game is coached between those two countries. Clear difference to their approach to attack and how they use the ball. And yeah, that totally caught me offside. I never knew there was such a huge discrepancy in coaching, and it's going to be very interesting to see if there's an uptake worldwide in teams using this platform, how we coach the game differently. And in fact, it's the first proper spying tool into how New Zealand does it. So, hopefully I get to crack the code.
It's interesting because one of the big things, the North-South divide has closed over the last couple of years, but previously it was always this thing was, the All Blacks learn they pass the ball, lots of kids, they learn to use their skills. And it's interesting that, that maybe that's catching on now in Ireland and hasn't caught on in South Africa so much. And that's, that North-South divide, part of the reason it's coming down is because actually they are trying to play when they're young and enjoying it. But cool.
Yeah, that's it. There's more influence, Paul. Definitely more influence from the top. I know the IRFU has very clear directives as to what they want. In the region of Leinster, for example, you have these representatives going to every single school and club game, talking to coaches, making sure they understand the principles of what they want Irish rugby to be. Fairness, they want the ball spread. And I think it's England who kind of started this and already reaping the rewards at junior level. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if the South are now on parity or if indeed we're falling slightly behind. What are we going to come up with to counter the years to come?
And so what's your Twitter handle so people can get hold of you?
Any coaches now from tomorrow, well, actually from today, will be able to go onto the site. It's www.rugo.net. So it's RUGGO.net. And yeah, there you can register your team. You can register your club and start scoring as soon as your season starts. So I'd be looking forward to seeing a couple of Kiwi coaches on there. Maybe if there's some Aussies listening in. I don't know if they still play rugby over there. From what I hear, the whole place is being shut down. But yeah, everyone's welcome on the platform. I hope to see as many coaches partake as possible.
Cool. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mike. You'll be getting into your rugby writing again soon, I assume. Now you've had your summer off watching cricket?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm hoping to do an opinion piece on this training camp thing probably tomorrow. And yeah, we'll be covering Super Rugby again with Last Word on Sports. So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Real Mike Pullman. Looking forward to just tweeting about rugby again. It should be great.
Cool. I'm looking forward to a great season. Now, as I said at the beginning of the show, I need to get to 1,000 subscribers. So please, I'm pointing up somewhere there. If you're watching the recording, there's my face there. So please click on that and subscribe. If you're watching the live one, click on the red box down below. Please subscribe as well. Help me get to 1,000 followers. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week and we'll be talking about the Australian conference. And I'll see if I can try and get the Scottish Canon on, our Australian, to give an Australian point of view as well. Let's have an accent from each of the places we're talking about during the shows. So thank you very much and catch you all next week.
Cheers, Paul.